Okay, let's start. So a very warm welcome to all of you to the masterclass of the 62nd Nordic Film Day Lübeck. And this year it's about something magic, making the invisible visible. It's about Animadok, and I'm very happy to see that we have a panel of very interesting people, and I think we'll have a great talk today. So I'm very happy after we have prepared this festival as a hybrid event. We had hoped the whole time that we would be able to have the festival in the cinemas here in Lübeck. But 1 week before the festival was to start, all the physical screenings have been canceled, and we are fully on digital online today. We started yesterday with the opening and with streaming, and now we have several panels and discussions also online. And I'm very happy that we host this masterclass on documentary film together with the Film Fund Hamburg, Schleswig-Holstein, and the Film Workshop in Kiel. And Arne is the head of Film Workshop, and he will lead us to through the discussion today. So Arne, it's yours.
Hi. But I think first Sebastian will lay down some housekeeping rules.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Yeah, welcome from me as well. I'm Sebastian, also from the festival, as you can prominently see. We are going to do this that way, that you should use the speaker view. So on the top right, you can select different views, and I would recommend to use the speaker view. And if you want to ask a question, please use the chat, and we are going to fill in the questions whenever there's some room and it fits, I guess. So enjoy the masterclass, and now it's up to you, Arne.
Okay, thank you very much. One more last remark from me regarding housekeeping. I think after 1 hour or so, we will open it up to discussion if that's possible. We'll see how it goes with the chat. We have 3 people sort of monitoring the chat, and they can read questions to us, because I think it's much faster than switching to people who actually ask the questions. First of all, I want to welcome the panelists, of course, wonderful masters of filmmaking. And this is a masterclass, although it's quite short. And I'm sure we could take a week or 2 just to talk with those guys here. But let's say hi to Ilze Burkovska-Jacobsen, who's joining us from Norway right now. No, she's in Latvia. Okay, and she is a filmmaker from Latvia, but also based in Norway. She has been at the Nordic Film Days twice before. She's a documentary filmmaker. You might actually remember this wonderful film, My Mother's Farm, about her mother's farm, surprisingly. That was also at the Nordic Film Days. So welcome, Ilze. The screen is switching every time I say something. It's a bit disorienting, but okay. And then we have a duo, 2 guys from Hamburg, Fabian and Frédéric Schuld. Fabian Driehorst, Frédéric Schuld from Fabian and Fred. That's an independent animation studio from Hamburg. You have produced quite a lot of films already. And this year you are also developing and producing a lot of films. People might, or Nordic Film Day viewers might actually remember you from À la Dérive, which won the Short Film Award in 2016. And I think one of your first films that really got a lot of attention was David. I think that's something I remember quite well, when I sort of noticed you the first time. And you guys met in Köln at the Arts and Media School there, but you have founded your studio in Hamburg. Right, so now you know our panelists, but it's always nice to have a little bit of orientation, or it's nice for the panelists to know their audience a little bit. So I will just ask some questions, and people who think that they fit into this category, they can raise their hand, and I mean that virtually. There's something called reaction on the bottom of your screen, and I will just do it. You can do this, or also just clap or whatever. So when I ask a question now, I would like everybody to just react who feels that they belong to this group. And the first group I'm asking, how many filmmakers do we have in the audience today? That's nice. Okay. So I'd say that's about like not well, a third maybe. How many of you guys are working in animation? And of course, that's not exclusive to the first question. You can be animation filmmaker as well. Okay, it's not as many as we had filmmakers. Do we have any distributors in the audience? I don't think we will have here. Okay, and my last fun question is, who's wearing shoes? Oh, okay, that's a relief. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, so most of you, well, say half of you are wearing shoes. That's nice to know. Okay, I will switch back to the speaker view now, and you should as well, because we're diving into the themes of today. And as Linda already said in her introduction, it's about the meeting of two kinds of filmmaking, documentary filmmaking and animation filmmaking, which at first sight might seem a little bit contradictory, because most people, when they think of documentary, the first thing they think about is direct cinema. So a camera following people around, not interfering with their life, and just, you know, observing and recording. And obviously this cannot be the case with animation. So that's something we will dive into today. The other thing we can talk about, sorry, is that then the subjectivity comes into effect, but at the same time, animation requires a lot of people working on it. So it's a very subjective view of filmmaking or of the world that you're transporting here. But at the same time, you have a lot of people working on it. So you have to have like a vision, communicating that to a team and so on. We can talk about this a little bit. And we will also talk a little bit about the different steps of filmmaking. So my idea was to structure this, that we begin with the idea and the development of the idea. Then we talk about financing, pre-production and production. Then we will talk about the actual film, but all of this always regarding to the two films we're talking about, of course. And then the last step would be distribution and the life that the film has when it's finished. So the two films we're talking about, I hope you have all seen. The first one is called My Favorite War by Ilze. It's an 82-minute long, well, documentary animation film. I think you said, Ilze, it's about 80% animation. Mm-hmm. So there's also some live footage in there, and then there's also some archival footage, photos from your past, stuff like that. And then the other film we're talking about is a short animated film. It's 5 minutes long. It's called The Chimney Swift, and it's by Frédéric Schuld, whom I'm going to call Fred, if that's okay, later on. Okay, and that is based on a report, or let's say on something that was recorded in the 19th century as a written voice. And then in that sense, it is a documentary, but we will talk about it later, what actually qualifies this as a documentary, or if it even is a documentary. my last remark before we actually talk about your films would be that animation and documentary actually now has quite a long history. One could say that, for instance, the first stop motion shorts by Nick Park, Creature Comfort, could be named as a documentary animation because it was like lip syncing actual interviews. Then very well known is the film Waltz with Bashir. That was like where animation and documentary got really going, and everybody noticed it. It was by Ari Vollmann. It was about the war in Palestine. Sorry, it's in 2008, and then, for instance, this year, one of the films named to be films that would have been screened in Cannes, but couldn't be screened because Cannes was cancelled, was the film Flee by Jonas Poe Rasmussen, by the studio Sun Creature in Denmark. That's a very recent example for a big production that is also using this technique of animation and documentary. So it's in a way well established. And still, Ilze, now I will begin with you. In your other films, you're a very classical documentary filmmaker. So when you began to develop this idea, what was the reason that you actually thought about doing this like an animation film?
Yes, thank you for the question. It is always the first question I always get before all screenings. Why did you make animation, and what was the reason of this beginning? So it's two parts. The actual inspiration to make this concrete film was one of the war episodes in my childhood to whom I refer in film. And it is a childhood memory of one man who grew up in that part in Letland, where it all happened. And he became a scriptwriter. And he said that he wanted to make a film because the scenes were too spectacular not to make the film. And it looks like that no Fellini couldn't imagine it. And then he passed and he never made the film. And I thought it really looks impressive. So I saw it in my mind and I thought it's only animation. It's possible only in animation because live action is too expensive. And so it all started why I wanted to connect some adventures from my life and from the history of the region in one film, and that was the only idea I had in the beginning. It has to be an animation, and then we can move to the second part of this classical documentary storyteller as me in my previous films. There are no archives showing neither the military objects who play a big part in my film, or they played a big part in my Soviet past. They surrounded us. And they were made in such way, actually, some of those military objects, that it would be impossible to take a picture of them, like the Zeppeliner in the skies. They were painted in silver color, so nobody could take a picture when they turned their camera up to sky. It means there are no visuals of the objects. That's the factual thing. And the emotional thing for me is there are no archives showing the feeling of being a Soviet person. Not the stiffness, not the grayness, not the fear, not the doubt, nothing in the visuals of the State Archive. And if there would be such a private archive from the events in the Soviet time in 80s when I was a school kid, I'm telling all the time, there were 2 people in my town who owned a film camera, 8mm camera. But they were not sick people. They were healthy people in their mind. They would not go to school and film their children becoming a pioneer, some communistic ritual to remember as something nice as we are showing our kids, you know, year after year, and the Christmas by the tree receiving presents. It was not that way. So the communistic rituals were never filmed in the way as you remember them. So that's my reason why I made animation.
And did you already have a history with animation? Did you grow up with a lot of animated cartoons on the television, or was there anything that drew you towards it already, or was it a very logical decision for you?
Of course, as a kid, I loved cartoons. I am kind of first generation in Latvia who has grown up with our national cartoons, because they started to make them in 70s when I was a kid, and I could compare them, Latvian films, which were technically kind of the beginners, to the big Soviet studios. And in that time, in 70s until the beginning of 80s, they could actually compare with Disney in hand-drawn feature films and techniques. And then in my childhood, this special memory was 1st of January. The Soviet Union made it as a special New Year's present for the Soviet kids. They were screening Tom and Jerry.
Okay. When you started to think about animation, you must have had already in your mind the knowledge how it works, that you have to write the script first, that it has to be animated after everything is already in place and so on. So was it a very different process for you doing this film when you compare it to a documentary you did before?
Yes, of course I did. That in this film I will first edit and then shoot. Quite opposite as you as you documentary. So and I really had to say that I looked forward to it as a child. I knew that it is so creative process. In the first, we started with sketching all of this, and then we made storyboards, and then we made animatics. So the sketching and drawing, it took many years, and I thought it was very fascinating to work with artists and people who are in the business and know what they're doing. But I can't say that I was completely unknown to animation. We make our company in Norway, we are making documentary series about children with different diagnoses. And those are portraits of children in age from 6 to 10. And they are usually explaining in our series, the series are very popular in Norway, they're running for 4 seasons. They are explaining their diagnosis with drawings, and we always have made an animation for that because it's so very visual, and it goes always straight to the point, to explaining to other kids how it feels, or it makes easier for kids to understand it. So in those series, I had been making animation just as a very, very short pieces since 2010. So there has been small, drops of experience, but I have never made any other short animation like a whole film before I started with the feature.
And I guess you had, well, I have seen, Sebastian, I've seen the question. I will come to it in a minute. Just one more question before that. Did you write a complete script before you went out to finance it, to find the animators and so on? Or was that also a process where you had to change a lot later on in the process?
Yes, it changed quite a lot because the story was much longer in the beginning, and there were more war stories in the film previously. But when we started with the animation scenes were set. So I was changing kind of the other stuff like live action and archive footage I was still looking for, and I was rewriting my voiceovers a lot until the end almost to make it as one, because the question is always, in my case, you can often ask, is it film about the past? And I'm making the point, it's not a film only about past, it's film about choices, and it's just an explanation how it is to feel under such a regime. So the big challenge was to explain why I want you, the audience of today, to relate to those questions, and that was very much into the work with voiceover.
And that's also always a question when you come to financing. How do you relate today to what you're actually showing there? We have a very short question from the chat asking you, what age group are you actually targeting with your film?
Yes, I am targeting people in age from 10 to whatever, 110. Because I think that kids from 10 years age are able to watch this film. I know that the worst places is the war archive, which I have used in the film, but I wanted to be in it, and I know that that's the reason why we can't show this film to very little children. But I know that from 10 years age, you are able to deal with those archive footages, and experience is that kids from 10, 11 to 12, they have a lot of questions, both in Norway, where we have screened the film, and in Latvia, about the history and about the past. And it's a bit also my criticism, because I know those scenes are the reason why people are unsure what's the target group of the audience. I was 8 years when I had to watch it at school, and it's also a comment about the Soviet system, what they did to us. We were placed at school to watch those scary films, and then all of us from my school, we met 1 month ago, and we remembered it, and we know how it traumatized us. So it's also the statement about what happened to us at that time.
Okay, we will come back to a couple of things we have touched here, but now I would like to switch to Fred, because you also well, there's a director's voice that you can all access on the homepage of the Nordic Film Days, and there you tell a little bit about how the Chimney Swift is actually autobiographical in some sense to you. So my first question to you would be, how did you come about this idea to make this film?
Yeah, thanks for that question, and thanks for seeing the little director's note there. Yeah, kind of improvised, I guess. I'm not really sure if that was the beginning of the idea. I mean, it was a strong memory I had, actually, but it has nothing to do with the story that is now in the film. Actually, it's just the location. I think everybody knows, and everybody has seen it. For me as a kid, of course, it was fascinating, this place, as I have described.
Which was a big fireplace. Maybe we should
big fireplace, yes. Mm-hmm. And a very old house. So as a kid, of course, you think about all the mystery that's going on there. And as a kid, of course, I watched Mary Poppins and other films that also contain this fireplace as a location, often in a location of like more charming, in a charming way, you know, something magical. And of course, that image was for me the same. I mean, when you look in this fireplace, it's really dirty and dark, and there's wind coming. And of course, there was this one moment where something happened inside. The bird who got stuck there, I don't know how, but he came down and he was not dead, he was living, and as I described, flying around in the living room. And this was like an image that burned itself in my memory. Later, I had these books in my hands about what actually happened in those fireplaces, like during the Victorian era, I would say. And somebody had to clean those places, of course, and it was impossible to go to adults, for adults to go inside. So usually they took kids for it, so very young kids. And I didn't know that it was like this, because the same way you look at the for New Year's Eve, you get this little sweepers, you know, that brings you luck, you know, with the pig and the ladder and everything. And this is a very romantic image of the chimney sweep. But in reality, in most of the places, especially in Europe, it was different. So the larger fireplaces only existed in the big houses, you know, for richer people. But the normal families, they always had this little fireplaces. And so, and you have to imagine the size of a vinyl disc, you know, like a 12-inch. That's the size of a flue, and imagine putting somebody in there. So I read all about those facts in the one book, and in the other book I found those interviews actually, which surprised me, with those masters. I don't know where those interviews, in which context they have been recorded, probably a police record or probably something a journalist did. I couldn't find the source why those interviews were done, but they are pretty good and pretty detailed. And the woman, Kathleen Strange, who has written the book, I mentioned the book also in the credits of the film. I took these interviews, and yeah, and now this image of my childhood memory and this topic merged together, I would say. And I thought about this boy meeting this bird in the same place.
I mean, the text is really incredibly cruel. And then when you find out that the guy who was talking was himself a child once who did the chimney sweeping, I mean, that's just really chilling. And then on the other hand, you have this juxtaposition of this very poetic imagery that you're using in a way. Was it like this in your head from the very beginning, or was there like a process where you actually had to go through different ideas?
No, it was not that from the beginning. We tried out a lot. We had a little team in our studio working with us. There's Alba and Rebecca, two great animators. And we played around a lot, how to show it. And of course, in the end, there had to be a decision for the style. And I came up with this pencil drawings, probably a little bit inspired by, I don't know, William Kentridge or something. I really like this artist. And I think it has many sources. But I like the idea to really break down everything except this chimney flue, which we showed in this POV of the young boy, and everything else is like, there's no house, there's no environment. This is just like very, very little sketches. And then inside you have this very dark place where everything happens. And I think I like this principle in the end. And we played around mostly with the perspectives and how to achieve this POV feeling, because this is actually something we have no images, no references at all. So when you Google the climbing boys, this is mostly the term for those little kids, you find a lot of images. Some are original, some are like taken later with actors, but mostly you don't see them inside. They are posing in front of the house, posing in front of the chimney, a fireplace, but never inside. And then we had some footage from little cameras nowadays when chimney sweeps, the modern chimney sweeps use this cameras to go inside the flue and look for the damage. And we looked at those professional videos they use for analyzing. Yeah. And I think in the end we had to figure out a style, and I came up with my personal sketching style, I would say then.
Was there ever the idea in your head that you would bring these two things together in the film? Your own memory of the fireplace and what you found about the boys, or was it always clear that the one is just, you know, the thing where it started and the other thing is like a separate thing for you?
Oh, you mean the original place? The original
yeah, I mean,
fireplace
your own, you as a person, was there ever the idea that you yourself would be in the film explaining why it all started and what made you think of this or whatever?
Yeah. I think that would be a bit wrong because I had nothing to do with the exact happening. It was only the trigger later. So I used myself only as the author of this and the editor of the story of this original interview. And I thought that's probably enough from my side, because I also did the drawings and my perception of probably how cruel it could be inside, because there are like a million ways to show what happened there. Nobody knows actually what those kids were thinking, what they were doing, if they were singing a song, if they were like praying or whatever they did. I don't know. I just thought about maybe what would I do when I would be there. Maybe that's the most personal question, because somehow that's what the boy in the film does. We don't know. So I had to figure it out myself and put myself in that position. Yeah. So
okay, now I will go to Fabian and continue talking about maybe a little bit about the way you two work together. When Fred comes with an idea like this, what's the next step? How are you going to go on and then actually put together the financing and the people who are going to work on the film and stuff like that?
Yeah, usually a lot comes together. So, I mean, we are running the company, the two of us, but we have very separate jobs. Like Fred is working as an artist and I'm as the producer. But when it comes to story and development, then we are working very closely together. I mean, we both studied filmmaking and art, and I really wanted to become a filmmaker in the first place. So for me, I come from art as well, but decided later that the production side is more interesting for me. But I'm very much involved in the development of story and working and reflecting about the dramaturgy and trying to support the filmmakers. And especially if Fred is coming with something that is a very close relationship. This project took us a lot of time. I saw that some people from the film funds are also here in the chat, so they know that we needed a couple of years to finish this film, not because we were working on this film for years, but this development process was just like super complicated. So we had these basic starting points and then trying to figure out how to tell the best story with these kind of elements. And when it came to, when we understood about these children, and then found out about this bird who actually changed his environment and just decided somehow for his whole species that the chimney is the best place for it to live in. That was so strange. And then to have this idea that these two people who are, characters, let's say, who are not supposed to be there would meet. I found this very strong, and I was very much. I was very sure that we should kind of try to make visible what we cannot see, so that we dive in the shoes of this kid and feel this claustrophobic moment. And in the beginning, we were thinking that the chimney is like this. But with the research, we found out it's like this. And then it was like, oh my God, I don't know how to squeeze the kid in. And then, yeah, just think about like climbing, like how would you kind of treat yourself? And that was so strange. And then we saw the material of the chimney, which is super dirty. So it becomes even smaller, and it's horrible. If you see that, I mean, and no wonder that so many kids died. And it's such a horrible time of history that we weren't aware of. And that was, yeah, child labor in Europe. It's not very long time ago. And so I found it very relevant to discuss that somehow, or to, yeah, to show this part of European history. And I mean, child labor is something that we of course see in other places, and maybe also judge, but we don't think so much about our own history, or the history of the countries that we are coming from. So in that sense, it was very relevant for me or us to tell this story even today, and thought that that could be a good link and people could relate to, hopefully.
And,
yeah, and then,
do you think, sorry, but
yeah.
do you think it is easier to finance a film that has this relation to reality, or is it easier when you have an animation film that's completely out of the head of the director or whatever? I
don't know.
Or maybe it just doesn't matter at all.
Maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, if the story is strong, I mean, no, I think, yeah, there should be a link. I mean, definitely something where I feel related to, like, and if I talk about history, that it should kind of resonate with today's audience and what we are going through somehow, like what Ilze was also mentioning. I mean, it's not only about this part of the history to show it, but also to connect with, and that we have with the animation, especially the chance that we can, yeah, identify somehow with that time and with the people who lived in that time, and then see, okay, it's not so far away. And it's a bit like if we talk about like this history books that we have in school, and everything is black and white, and there's a certain distance to it. Second World War is everything is black and white, and the people are dressed differently. And then there was this one film, I forgot the title. I think Peter Jackson did that for many years, and he was just coloring all this material. And then he gave them voices and put a sound design under it, and it was like, oh, this is so close. And immediately it felt completely different. I mean, it's a film that you can discuss if it's good or not, but it was quite interesting how powerful that was. And I think in that sense, animation can do a lot to bring, or yeah, bring stories closer, or make them alive, not only as a tool, but also as an artistic voice, or yeah, or tool to bring out the artistic voice, the authorship, which for me is very interesting in animated documentaries, that there is an actually handwriting. This is an art house kind of film, and yeah.
That's something we can ask Ilze also now, I think. How did you decide on the style of it? Because I don't know, did you do drawings yourself and then handed them over to someone else and said, that's what I want? Or did you look for someone who you thought of was close to what you were aiming at?
Yeah, I'm very, very bad painter. I can't make sketches. They are funny. But about artists, I wanted very much the Norwegian illustrator Svein Nyhus to be concept artist of this film. It was very important to me because he is, in his drawings, he kind of combines something childish with some very deep human feelings, which we would consider as adult, as grown-ups. There is something naive and scary at the same time in his expression. And his drawings had been used in this short film Angry Man by Anita Tilley, made more than 10 years ago. And I was very fascinated by her work in that film. So I asked Svein, and he said, no, I will not do it. It's too big, it's too serious. And I'm just a children book illustrator, and okay, your story is about childhood, but I will not go into that. And he was persuaded by his wife, an author, a writer, who said that you can manage. It's important that you tribute to it. And I'm very grateful to her that Sven agreed and followed us during all the journey. And he made a concept for that. But I would say about this art style, from the very beginning, when I was writing a script, I knew very well that I have to make an imaginary, this images of expression of my imaginings as a child. And that was one of the very important things why I made animation, because it gave me a chance not to just visualize those events which took place. As I said, there are no archives, but also animation gave me the possibility to visualize important things, like this refrigerator in my teacher's school lesson, when she was telling how the Soviet Union saved butter for everyone. And it's very direct into childish imagination. It's how I saw it in my eyes then at school, and may it be, you know, the Soviet propaganda things or my mother's depression. It's all, you know, possible with those images while you are kind of putting together in one animated film. So I had to mention one more example and star for me. It's Marjan Sentrapi with Persepolis, because she has been a really, you know, great inspiration for me. When I watched Persepolis the first time, I started to think it is possible to make such a historical, rich story from the girl's point of view. And I felt that I know now so much about Iran because of her film. And I was very emotionally touched by it. So she kind of made me think that there are possibilities to make documentaries this way. And then there have been a lot of other artists tributing later when we started with animation. So there has been Animation Studio Triton in Latvia, making characters and props, and we used only one background artist, Laima Punto, for all the backgrounds.
There's a question actually from the audience, and it ties into this a lot. The question is, when you actually saw your memory or your visions you had as a child animated, you actually saw the images. Was that in a way bringing, well, what kind of emotions triggered it? Was it hard for you to see this, or was it liberating, or?
Images were liberating. I struggled most about the idea of film, to call it that it's autobiographical film, because I'm always saying I'm making film about society, about society's processes. It's a bigger story. It's not my own my own struggles. And if I would like to make a film about my own struggles, about how it is yeah, from the psychologically seen point of view, I would make a different film. This film is just in the context of the political system, growing up in the concrete political system. And it was painful enough. But the images from the childhood, the historical ones, they were funny, they were easy, like what is to have this coolant cauldron, those Soviet images that I really enjoyed making images of them. Painful for me was the scene in which I lived emotionally very strongly about how my mother had to become a member of the Communist Party. That was a struggle for me. Yes.
So in a way, although animation obviously is not like a documentary that's showing in black and white what happened or whatever, it's actually when you tell it like this, it's much more truthful to what you actually want to communicate. It actually communicates the feeling of the time and the style of the time in a way that's maybe better understandable even than when you would have used archival footage, right? Is that something that you would agree?
Yes, I have to say one thing about style. We used cutout animation very much because now this film looks very much like our childhood cartoons from 70s and especially 80s. The moves are very much like from that time, and I feel that it gives some documentary authenticity. But the other thing is very interesting what Fabian said about coloring history, because I'm using also very much cliches in my film in the color palette. My grandfather's farm, it's always shiny and light blue and pink and green, strong colors. Then all the Soviet life in the little town where I grew up and that suburb feeling, it's very gray and very dark. And then all the and red as a contrast to this as a communistic, power. And then all the war stories, they are very much in sepia, kind of to get this old film look. And I thought, what if I would made it all in kind of one normal film color palette? I'm not using those cliches. I think my choice was then based very much in that I'm saying this is documentary and I want you to feel this certain time. By using those cliches, I want to move you to the feeling of those certain years, and I think that you emotionally get more connected to the feeling of that period while are you placed in the let's say traditional color palette of what we are used to while thinking about those days. And one more thing, I decided also in English version to use Latvian actors voicing the film, because I felt that it was also kind of making a stronger feeling of authenticity and documentarism, because they struggle with the English accents and it feels like the people are talking from 80s and it's more like authentic documentary feeling, even though like everybody is an actor in voicing.
And another thing that sets animation, or especially your film, apart from a usual documentary, is that you are using images from your imagination. So you see dreams of your childhood, you see terrible dreams that you're having as a girl. and you wouldn't have used that, I guess, in a documentary that's just based on archival footage or whatever. Did it come natural to you which scenes to use, but where to actually take a turn from reality into your imagination?
As I said, like those propaganda things in my visions, they are very true and very documentaric. And then those nightmare scenes, they are also, I'm grateful to animation that it gives me a possibility to make at least the images. As you say, I would never could have a possibility to put those that ghost image in my kind of normal documentary film using archives. So it came natural, yes, and it's so strange, but because those nightmares, they have been different. In my generation, there are so many people telling how were the forms of day nightmares of the war coming. Somebody saw planes, somebody saw nuclear bomb coming, somebody saw rockets. It was very different. Of course, that could be a theme for another documentary, an animated documentary, just to make images of those nightmares, how they were, and why we did really believe, people in my age, we believe that we lived in the most fear and happiness-giving country in the world, because we were thinking that this country protects us from this upcoming war.
Fred, coming back to you, and the question, do you actually think it's useful to think of this or these kinds of films as documentaries, or is it something that you actually don't think about when you work on it?
You mean by these films, the shorts we did?
I mean, in general, do we have to label these documentary animations, or is it actually just some sort of animated filmmaking?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. I mean, Fabian and me, we think a lot about this labeling, of course, but sometimes it's impossible to choose, because then it's clear that you found something true, and not like this kind of true you have in fiction. It's something you have so many facts and so many like anchor points you cannot escape anymore. So everything you try to hide or change or make it different feels bad. And I think this is a moment where it's becoming really a documentary, where you feel obliged to use this, and it wants to be there, it wants to be told. And I think in the case of the Chimney Swift, it's something that reminded me of other films, of course, where I saw, like, for example, there's this one film, it's really a very small film called My Dad from Marcus Armitage. It's a British student film, I think. It's nothing really special, but he did a great film about this father and boy connection, where the boy discovers that his father is like becoming very right-wing, very anti foreign people, like this typical football soccer fan who like is drinking all day, and this boy doesn't understand what happens there. So, and he's just copying what his father does. And I think a lot is also in the Chimney Swift. Not that I in any way like copied stuff of this. It was just an inspiration, and I saw like how it could work. And funny enough, I saw it later. The film was already mostly done, and I saw this short film, and I thought, like, yeah, that's exactly something very actual and modern right now that I try to do with this very old stuff, with this old phenomenon that this little boy is actually becoming the master itself, later recruiting the new generation of kids doing the same shit he's complaining about and really suffering with. And he's doing with this kind of reflex in society, he's doing the same, because there's no other way to go for him. There's nothing else he knows, like in the film in the end where there's this quotation, yeah, it's all I know, you know, this is everything I know, and it's not so bad. So he tries to kind of telling himself that it's probably a good thing also to do. And And I like that this was the point actually where it made like a very, very documentary topic, because somebody really said that, and yeah.
So it's in a way, it's the same what Ilse said, that you can be more true to the subject by being more liberal, by being more free in your work, because animation doesn't show what actually happened, but it shows like another dimension that gives you access to the feeling that maybe happened there. Is that true in a way?
Yeah, of course. You relate, and you have this feeling. You have to find it in yourself, of course. And I have a lot of things then, of course, like everybody else, where you are stuck in your own little rhythm, and it takes a lot of happenings to get you out of there, even if it's just a little stupid thing from a daily routine. And when you stack that up to this topic in the Chimney Swift, it's actually the same reflex, but in a much better, in a much worse situation, of course, and affecting not only your own life, the life of many others. And I really found that interesting to take this this true element and make it very how do you say it? Maybe general, like you can really put every topic inside, and it's kind of true, you know,
like a universal truth.
Universal, yeah, that's the right term. Thank you.
And when do you think is the point or the time in your film where the audience actually gets it, that this all happened? Because usually it probably is just tied in with other short films in a program, and maybe you're not prepared what you're watching. You just go into the short film program, you watch a couple of films. Where do you think is this moment where you actually think as a viewer, oh my God, this really happened, this is crazy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never really thought about this special moment, but I think it's in the end, where there's, of course, the change in the voice, where this man suddenly tells something different. It goes away from this tutorial of being cruel and how I did it and how you do it and what happened, and suddenly he's doing this like, oh, something happened to me, and I was the one who's not in charge there, and I had to suffer. And then he's again changing, and then all the text comes in the end telling about like this and that happened at this time, and now we have this. I think that's the moment really where you see like, okay, there's a filmmaker who's putting text in his film. That's really, I mean, yeah, I don't like using this actually, but it's the best way to tell something serious then in the end, where you really want to say something that shouldn't be misunderstood in a way, because it's just a fact that you want to share in the end. And I think after this twist in the story, because we are still in this world where the bird is there and the boy is there, and it feels a little bit fantastic still, and then in the end it switches to real life, and you get a little lesson maybe to okay, yeah, there was this time in Europe where stuff like this happened, and there was a time where it ended, and maybe it's still going on in another country. That's also something very important. It didn't end there, and we wanted to share this this thought that nothing really stops for everybody. It's just like child labor today. It's still there. I mean, so it never ended really. Yeah.
Fabian, maybe you can pick this thought up. You want to communicate this about child labor, that there was this period of time and that it's maybe still happening someplace else. How do you think can you do this with this 5-minute film? Is it just by showing it at festivals, or are there other possibilities where this film can actually sort of highlight this this question of child labor?
Yeah, I think that the festivals obviously is the first place to go, and then yeah, usually we try to find good partners for distribution. On the one hand, short film distributors who bring that to VOD platforms or broadcasters. to reach a wider audience. And but we also were quite lucky in the past to find distributors from the from school and educational institutions. And this is a fantastic collaboration usually, because they really know how to package the film with informational materials for the teachers or for the people in charge, to include that in their in their program that they have with their students, and through that reaching the children themselves, educate them in a way, or at least start a discussion. I mean, this is not a, it's just a one piece that you can use, which is illustrating, I think, a very interesting part of history, but also you can, as we mentioned before, it's universal still, and it's telling a lot about human behavior and how not only us, but also in Asia, in Africa, in North America, we are all like the same in this sense of like just repeating of ourselves and not reflecting, and often choosing the easiest path. So I think this is a film where I hope that we will bring it to the children somehow. So students, like maybe also like 10 plus. It's a tough topic, so it's maybe not for the youngest, but I think it's definitely something that should be discussed with the older students. And this is like the ways that we would go for in terms of distribution.
And is that something you discuss already when you are working on developing the film, or is this something that you come up with like a strategy when you have the finished film?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think I'm very familiar with. So it's in my head from the beginning on. And of course, then we have to see what the film actually is in the end. Sometimes the target group changes a bit. In the beginning, I thought it could be for younger kids, but then we had to make some decisions, and this very tough part that is in there, which is quite brutal, I think was necessary to tell the story. So then we can, I mean, with short film, we are quite free anyways, but still, I think it's good to have that part in the film, and then not reaching the youngest. And because in any case, like child labor is something that can be maybe discussed with students of a bit older age or teenagers. So in that case, it made sense,
Mm-hmm.
But it's also how we choose the festivals somehow, like when the film is finished, a bit before we are looking for the right places or searching for the right places to start with, and these kind of strategies.
And I guess it's international strategy from the very start, right? Because
absolutely.
In this case, it was an English source, but with animation, you can always have a soundtrack with different languages and just send it around the world, right?
Yeah.
And you also, sorry?
Sorry, no, please.
No, I mean, you are known for your international co-productions anyway. I mean, you're also producing with Norway right now, and you produced with France and stuff. So
yeah,
I guess it is something that you think about from the very start.
Yeah, international co-production. I mean, I love that. it's very personal. And I think it's fantastic, especially in animation, for the cultural exchange. For me, it has to make sense for the story and for the film, the collaboration. It's not only to get to finding money at specific places, but really to work on the film together as early as possible, of course, and as close as possible. Also as I said, like I'm a creative producer, so I like to be part of the story development and all these decisions, if possible, and then as early as possible, even if I'm a minor producer. And in that film, I mean, the good thing is that it was in English from beginning on. We didn't do a German dubbing because again, we thought it's an older age group targeted, so subtitles might be okay. And then we wanted to keep it in this old English, which is also for some people not so easy to understand. So we have subtitles also in English just to make sure that the message can be delivered. And then we started the festivals with Hot Dogs, like a very prominent documentary festival in North America, which I think was a good decision to label this as a documentary from the beginning on, and then see how other places will pick it up. And so far we were quite lucky and happy with with the reception of the film. So it's a small film, it's 5 minutes only. But yeah, and the previous film with from Fred, Carlotta's Face, it was also super nice because it was traveling so like crazy, like all over the world. And in the end, we had like subtitles with 15 languages or so. I don't know, I haven't counted them, but it's very nice. You can put them all in Vimeo, and now the film is online and you can have Russian dubbing or Japanese dubbing, and this film can just be understood by everyone, even if the original language in that case is German. And yeah, this is just fantastic. Yeah.
Ilze, you had your premiere with My Favorite War at Annecy, which is actually an animation film festival. So that must have been something quite new for you. And you told me before that the film already did a lot of traveling, and that it always touches people in a different way wherever it's shown. Maybe you can tell a little bit about your experience compared to how your experiences were before as like a strictly documentary filmmaker, or whatever you can call this. Was it different to be at Annecy first and then receive an award there and everything?
In these times,
yeah, of course.
Everywhere. I'm here in Riga, and I'm happy because being at home makes me kind of feel that I'm safe, not going with airplanes, not going to airports and all that. You just make it's absurd status for the planet right now. Of course, for the animators, you know, my main animator, he said, I'm making film for 5 years. I would never imagine that this film would make to Annecy. I would never imagine that we will win. That year, Annecy doesn't happen. What do you say to people? You know, they want to go to Mecca, and Mecca is closed. So for me, it has been just to be creative and find solutions how to celebrate this crazy status. I took all my animators in some shabby bus that day when we had the world premiere in Annecy, and we went to my grandfather's farm, and we watched it in the empty house only with my cousin at place. He lives in this house, and it was meta, you know, watching the same house as they have been drawing, and just being there on location scouting. And they were it was a special event, the world premiere in my grandfather's house. We kind of you know, the props are there, and the right all how it looks, what they have been drawing, it's still there. And yeah, I can tell more about this, and the reception around the world is fantastic, and I'm very touched by it. So and I am in peace, so I can work on other films, and I have kind of time to develop other things. But I wanted to say also about this truth and documentarism, exactly like referring to my grandfather's house. It took a lot of time to get proper drawings and proper images of the props, because I'm claiming it's documentary, you know. The year of the bus produced, showed in the film the year of the tractor, which model is right, the lamps at school, and the books, and the look of everything, you know. It had to be true to make you to feel that you are in the right time. and I really enjoyed that process, going through, it's so difficult to find images when you need them. There are never the right keywords when you search. You have to look for something else, and then you will find, something opposite of what you searched. But it was really that part of work I enjoyed really much. But like the reception, yes, people always relate to something else in the film. Somebody reflects to the visionary scenes, like the animation, how it's made, and other people are very fond of the ending, where I'm touching the current situation. So yeah, each person has some different angle, because everybody is different, and the resonance in our souls to this many layers of the puzzle in my film, there is also the same thing.
But that means that your canvas is so broad that everybody finds something to relate to, which is also quite an achievement, I think, to think about it like that. And I told you in our talk about this that I could very much relate to the atmosphere. Although I grew up in Western Germany in the 70s, this Cold War atmosphere was right there for me again. And we had a version of that in Western Germany as well. So that was true for me to feel that again. It's very interesting. Can you maybe tell also a little bit about the international aspect of it? Because you had finance partners from a couple of countries, and I guess you were like an international team working on it, or was it mainly in Latvia with the Latvian animators?
I am sorry to say that it didn't work out with Germany. We tried, but I guess there was several reasons why we couldn't make it at the end. There is difficult to say that it is a universal story, although it is a very Latvian story at the same time, and that's difficult for the film funds to look at in that early stage of the production. And maybe now we could say that we could relate to the world with a bit more different eyes, considering how much the United States president can influence the whole world around us, and what's the stakes of democracy right now. But at the end, it was mainly Latvian and Norwegian co-production.
So you were going back and forth between those two countries a lot, or was it was the creative team?
The team was in Latvia, and my background artist, she worked from Denmark.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from our audience? Because we have a quarter of an hour left. And if you have some questions, you have to ask them now, I guess. Sebastian? No,
we could also open up all the mics now, I guess. So
you can try
if
it's not chaotic.
No, you're able to just unmute you, and you can talk to us directly that way. Maybe that's easier for you.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, also speak here.
I am Ásti Stóruðsen from Iceland. I'm just curious, from the film, the Latvian Norwegian film, did any TV station buy it actually and broadcast it?
Yes, we tried the Icelandic TV station. They didn't answer us yet for many years, but other TV stations has bought it. Like of course, Latvian and Norwegian, Estonian and Swedish, and then the MDR in Germany has bought it. They did it last year, and I'm very happy. There will be German version, the dubbed German version in Germany, and yeah, the station named Current Times, who is broadcasting for all the ex-Soviet Union plus Israel territory. They will broadcast it, and we are now in talks with several others channels. But the kind of pre-sales has been very tough for the film like this, because yeah, there is always this question where to put it, in which slot, and maybe it's too artistic or maybe it's too documentaric, and the channels don't know. But now it's easier, more and more easier, because you have those online platforms. You don't consider that much just I don't know the English now, but like the manual straight TV shown in the certain time by the broadcaster. You go to online platforms, and that's easier for them to combine all the slots.
Thank you.
Have you had already a showing in Russia?
It will come in Russia. There will be film festivals screening it in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And I'm especially proud that film will be screened in Minsk, in Belarus, in film there. And that's really, I feel like yeah, some kind of achievement of the by the message of the film. But it has been screened also for the full houses in Hong Kong, and the response from Hong Kong has been just overwhelming. The Cinematheque there had 3 screenings, and people are writing to me that they hope that they will win in their fight.
Do you have any other question from the audience? Don't be shy, people, but I mean, I can also just go on talking to Fabian, maybe if, if he's not too surprised.
No.
But let's touch this question again of this being a documentary and an animation at the same time. Does it give it a broader appeal actually for festivals? Because Ilze just said that it's actually hard for the stations to come up with a slot and say, this kind of film we have to show at this kind of format. But in your experience, if you compare it to the straight animation projects, let's say, do you have a broader idea, or can it travel much further?
I mean, I would not speak in general, but from my experience, yes, this is super interesting. Well, yeah, for festivals, because of this artistic value, I think, the authorship and the form that it found. So especially with Fred's films, I have very good experience, and also as I'm distributing some films from other directors as well, I always feel it's very well received, animated documentaries, as well in the documentary festivals, as well as in the animation, or like the A or whatever kind of yeah, more open festivals, not specialized in a specific way. If it's, yeah, if you feel that this is really something strongly connected, like the story and the way of how to tell the story in the animation. It's not like a decoration, then it wouldn't really fit. But if you feel that the director really had a vision and it could only be told in this specific way, then I think this is high value. Yeah. And from the broadcaster perspective, I understand that. I mean, to be skeptical because you don't really know how this would feel, maybe if you're not really experienced in animation, because you're focused on documentary filmmaking. And then it's also a financing question, because usually documentaries are not that cost effective, or not so expensive like animation is. And yeah, so this is something where it can be very tricky, and I really understand the trouble that Ilze has or had in the financing phase, because yeah, you have to make people understand why the animation is so important and why it's important to invest in this form. Yeah, but
And
I
why
think
it's much more
she proves
expensive.
that, yeah, it's more expensive, yeah. But it also proves that it's a very strong film coming out. In this year's Cannes edition, there was 2 animated documentaries in the main competition, which I found very impressive, and both very different films, but very strong ones. So maybe people get more and more used or more and more interested in that. Yeah, I would hope for that, because I think it's a very, very strong way of telling stories.
We have 2 more questions from the chat, actually. And the first one is, and I will give this directly to you, Fabian. Could you sum up the criteria when an animation is a documentary? Am I right that the most important thing is to show something that really has happened?
Yeah, that is a documentary question. Like, what is documentary? It's not only, I mean, we have the same discussion with documentary filmmakers who are not using animation. How much can you manipulate, and how much can you bring from yourself as a subjective perspective into a film? Can you stage scenes afterwards? Or is that, I mean, does that help the story? Is that, I mean, this is, it's a very good question. And yeah, in that sense,
there's always a new answer to that then, maybe.
Somehow, yes. I mean, yeah, we are based, you know, our films are based on something that actually happened, and it's a subjective perspective of the author or director of the film. So in that sense, yeah. But for example, in the Chimney Swift, it's based on this written interview, but then of course we used British actors. So it's quite far from that, and you just have to believe somehow that it's true. I mean, it's not that we are with the camera there and then, I mean, still we are telling you that this is the moment, and maybe we have staged it as well. But yeah, it's always like you believe in the truth, or yeah.
I have a funny story from our, if I may speak,
yeah, please.
From our university, because this was the topic of one seminar one of our professors gave, and this was the exact question of that seminar. And then he showed us a bunch of very great films, and then he showed us this problem, you know, that some people have this question, a lot of people have this question, because it's a bit controversially, like what is documentary and what not. And then he came with this term ethnological film. And then he showed us an ethnological film, which is just, there are many rules. You don't have to interfere with anything. You put the camera, it's like in science. You have to write down the factors, the time, how warm was it, which part of the day. You only have to use the original sound. So no sound design, no music. And that's a real one-to-one picture, but there's a lot of questions, because how can it be original when there's a frame already? So you cannot see what happened right and left from what you just made the decision of showing. And there it starts, actually. There was the moment where he put the threshold. In this moment, it becomes something else. It's not a original document anymore. It's something you have made one decision. That's the first of many decisions what a documentary film contains, and it becomes something totally different. There's nothing where you can really prove that it's real and that it's something accurate. Of course, the truth is something you have to, I mean, you have to believe your film, of course, when you make it, and your audience have to believe it. If you feel something is wrong and something is manipulating you, of course, it gets a bit weird. And of course, journalists feel the same way. but in the end, you make a film with a story, and I think that for me, when I do this films, it has to be something true in the beginning, where you believe it's really something that motivated you and that touched you, and you feel of sharing it, of doing something documentary there. And then the rest, I think, when I believe our professor also, it's something you cannot even put a label on. It's not a fiction film, of course, but a little bit of fiction is always in documentary, because you have to change every parameter of what you see there and what you edit there. Yeah.
It's always storytelling. You cannot get around that fact. But I think then maybe the document is that it's what you are putting up on the screen as something that's true to you. I think that's what you're documenting then maybe. But we have one last question, and I think then I have to close it. And Fred, you can maybe answer that all right. Would it have been possible to make your films 10 years ago? And regarding to the big shifts now towards streaming, Apple, Netflix, and so on, would you think, do you think that your filmmaking will adapt to this? Will it change through the changes in the streaming world?
So for me, I would say, I'm not really sure. 10 years ago, so maybe, yeah. I think animated documentaries, because this is what we now talk about, I think they are, yeah, it's a phenomenon that became like more and more present. I think you mentioned, Arne, some of them, the big ones, and they are not so old. So I guess this genre, I don't know how old it is really. I think there's a lot of, when you really search for it, there's a lot.
100 years. It's really old.
It's really old, yeah. But it's not so common. I think it's now a bit more common than it was 100 years ago. And so I guess the streaming question in this question is, it doesn't touch our film so much, because Netflix, Apple, and Disney Plus is not now for the Chimney Swift. It's not interesting right now. I think maybe there will be an opportunity, but I guess what is meant by this is like, maybe this is even a question more for Ilze or Fabian also to answer. For me, I really like this new possibilities, and I think yes, we can try out new formats, and it happens also. I really feel good about that. But maybe I give the question to away to Ilze and Fabian.
Yeah, Ilze, maybe you can give an answer, because you started this almost 10 years ago. So in a way, yes, you might have been able to make it 10 years ago if it would have been more swift. But do you feel a pressure, or do you feel freedom coming with the new streaming services towards your filmmaking? Will it change what you are actually doing?
The first thing I would say, I am very optimistic on behalf of the animation, because I think that in these times the big feature film productions are struggling. So the animation kind of gets more the role of the problem solver. With what kind of stories and how can we tell them in the time of isolation. It looks for me right now that people are demanding more and more animation, and at least very much in the ordinary documentary films, they are using it more to explain kind of either a problem or some symbolic topics in ordinary documentaries. So I feel that kind of animation is getting up more and more and more, and the generations who were not familiar watching animation, they are more comfortable with it now as a spectators, and that means also commissioning editors, and that means also the people who are buying for those platforms. So maybe 10 years ago it was too strict in the which shelf we have to put you. now the platforms are opening more and more. So I think that until the day that everybody just broadcasts from your own YouTube channel, we are now in kind of some transformation period again with Vimeo and paid platforms like that.
All right, we have already run out of time, I'm afraid. Thank you so much. Thanks to our great panelists. Thanks to Ilze, to Fabian and Fred. Thanks to Linde for a wonderful festival. Again, as always, thanks for having us. Sebastian, Marietta, thanks for the technical support. Enrico, thanks also for the technical support. And well, what can I say? We've reached the end of a great show, as Kermit would have said. So thanks again. And I don't know how this will end now. I guess Sebastian will just flip a switch. So see you all. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.
See you another time.
Thanks, Arne and everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes, I'm gonna flip a switch now, so be prepared.
Flip it.
Flip it.